Hello internet friends, my name is Catherine and I'm the human behind Creation Miss Couture, and today is another Color Wheel Monday, the series in which I make my way through color theory one color at a time. And today we're doing deep magenta with blazing orange. So we're going to be able to see the full spectrum from the deep magenta. In the middle we are going to have our red, and then we are going to have our blazing orange at the end of it. So we're going to have a very nice full fade for this one. So I'm very excited to share it with you. So let's get into this. And welcome back to another episode of Color Wheel Monday, the series in which I make my way through color theory one color at a time. And today we are doing deep magenta with our blazing orange. So this time I'm going to be filming this portion to make sure that I actually do the right proportion of dry powder to water. So first thing we're going to do is grab our respirator because we do not want to breathe any fine particles, and because we also only have one pair of lungs, so please protect them. So the stock solution we're doing is 1% depth of shade. So we are doing 1 gram per 100 milliliter of water. So I'm going to measure 1 gram if I can avoid, destroying everything. And I have too much dry powder. So 1 gram is really not a whole lot of dry powder, which is great because just a tiny bit of dry powder can go a very long way. Just a tiny bit out. Almost. There we go. So we have our 1 gram of deep magenta. Now we're going to do 1 gram of blazing orange. And always make sure to zero out your scale before measuring anything, because we want to be as precise as possible. Now we are just a tiny bit over. And some powder are heavier than others, so you have to take that into consideration as well. And then we just... So that's why I prefer to measure everything with my scale rather than using tablespoon or teaspoons, because usually I end up... You can't be as precise, basically. Okay, we're good. So we have 1 gram of each. So we're going to be adding our water. And now that we have liquid in here, we can remove our respirator because basically the compounds, it's the fine particle that we don't want to breathe. So we don't want to breathe any of the metals that are in there. So once it's in the liquid form, we're all good to go. So let's mix. That. And I need to add a tiny bit more water, I think, in my blazing orange. I always do that. For some reason, I'm always saying blazing orange and brilliant yellow. No, now you see, I did it the right way. Oh, I don't know what is my problem with this. Okay, so we're going to grab our mason jar so we can add our tiny 10 gram mini skeins of... Is it straw? No, it's not straw. Anyways, we were using Nitpick, and they're 10 gram mini skeins of 100% superwash merino. Okay, so we're going to be adding our stock solution into the mason jars. So this is tap water, and there's roughly 400 milliliter in the jars, and there's no citric acid as of right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up until the 6th jar. We're going to have a 1% stock solution for from the deep magenta and going down there, we're going to go and lower our depth of shade. So we're going to go 0.75, 0.5, 0.2, 0.5, well, not 0.25, 0.10, and 0.05% depth of shade of our deep magenta. And we're going to do the reverse with the blazing orange. So here it's going to be 1% up to here, and we're going to decrease this thing. So that way we can have the full gradient of color there. So we're going to start with our 10 milliliter here. Hopefully I made enough of my stock solution. If not, I'll just do more. What can I say? So we are using Dharma Trading Co., but you can use whichever company that makes citric acid dyes, well, acid dyes that you want. Okay, so 6. So now we're going to start decreasing, and with our 7.5 milliliter of our 1% depth of shade. So now we're doing 5. Like this. So now we are at 2.5 milliliter. Like that. Now we're at 1. And 0.5 milliliter. So I feel like it's going to deepen the orange that we have for this. So I am going to do the same as we just did with our 10 milliliter. And we're starting to decrease the quantity of liquid we need. With our 7.5. So I really like to do the increment this way. And I really like to... I'm sorry. I have a little something in the throat. So it just makes it easier. I like to use a metric system because it makes everything easier to calculate, especially when you're calculating in grams, because it's just, if you're looking for 1% and you have 100 gram, 1% of 100 gram, it's 1 gram. So it just makes everything easier. So we're just going to quickly stir the mason jars. We're going to be adding the citric acid later when we have warmed up a little bit the water for the mason jars. Okay, so we are going to grab our mini skeins. So you can see that we still have here our deep magenta. It's pretty vibrant. It might be slightly more warm than the rest. But also a reminder that some colors will only start to actually strike properly the yarn once we have incorporated acidity and the heat. It's more common with blue pigment to truly need the acidity and the... oh, it's pretty much red now. Yes, a little bit when we did the experiment with brilliant yellow, we created red with our deep magenta. Okay, yes. So it's usually blue and green pigment that will need to have both the heat and the citric acid to fully show up on the yarn, which makes sense because that's how it is. Yes, so we are going to... my mini skeins got all tangled up, and I can't wait to be done with those mini skeins because usually the stroll, fingering stroll from the pick, they are slightly longer skein and they tie them nicely, but for some reason, the um those ones, okay, I need to double check the name of it. So they're the swish fingering one from the pick, and for some reason they are very short diameter of mini skeins, and it just makes life so much harder. And the way that they prep with the thing, you have to cut some of the ties so that you don't have resistance on it, because if you don't cut them, you'll have white spots on your yarn, and it's very frustrating. Very frustrating. And now we have the orange tone that are very warm, very pretty. So yeah, so there is pros and cons with Knit Pick. They obviously have affordable yarn there, so if you're getting started, it's really nice for that. However, some of their yarn is not the nicest sometimes. Anyways, so we are going to put this in the double boiler, and I will see you in a few minutes. All right, so we're going to let this warm up a little bit before adding the citric acid, because that way it gives a chance for the color to strike more evenly on the yarn. So usually wait like 10-15 minutes, especially when it comes to the double boiler, because it takes a little bit longer for the water to reach the right temperature, because we're hoping to go between 85 to 95 Celsius, so that way it gets high enough, but it's not a boiling point. So we don't compromise the integrity of the yarn, and we don't fry our yarn, which is not something that we want to do because it's very not fun. So we're going to see each other in 15 minutes. Okay, let's do this. Let's add our citric acid. So usually, rule of thumb when it comes to citric acid is 1 tablespoon per pound, so 454 grams of fiber and or yarn. So it comes down to like 1 teaspoon per skein of yarn. But since we have 10-gram mini skeins, we really don't need that much citric acid to do that. So like a quarter or an eighth of a teaspoon would suffice in this case. So where's my spoon? We're just going to do this. So what we're going to do now is just wait for the water to reach between 85 to 95 Celsius. So that way the skein, the dye can properly set on the yarn. And once we've reached that temperature, we will put a 30 minutes on the, how is it? What is the name of on the clock, I guess. So 30 minutes on the clock when we reach the right temperature. So it's not only from the last dye you've added, it's also once you've reached the right temperature. So I will see you in about probably 45 minutes because the water is getting at the right temperature. So we'll see you later. Bye. Okay, let's take a peek. And we are pretty much good to go. So we're going to be able to turn off the heat, let it completely cool off, and then once it's cooled off, we will wash off any excess dye, because we all know that with deep magenta we always have some excess dye. Okay, so I will see you later. Bye. Let's do our wash of the excess dye. So we already know that we're going to have some bleeding just because we have deep magenta, and you can already see the pink in it. So we're going to let this soak for like 10-15 minutes, and we're going to be back. Okay, let's do this. As you can see, we have quite a bit of pink, which we were expecting. So hopefully we won't need too much work here. Okay, so we still have a faint tint of pink in here. So I think we're going to let it soak a tiny bit for maybe like another 10 minutes. We're going to let it soak for like 10 minutes, and then we're going to come back and we're going to let it dry. Okay. We should be good now. And we are pretty clear, so I'm happy with this. I'm going to put this in a spin dryer so we can have that dry overnight, and I'm going to quickly show you what the color we have left in mason jars. So you can see we still have quite a bit of color in the mason jars with the 1% depth of shade of stock solution. So if you have leftover color and you're using deep magenta, don't worry, that's normal. It happens to the best of us, unfortunately. The higher the percentage of depth you have, the more chances you have to have leftover color in your pot. So anyways, I'm going to put my stuff in a spin dryer and let it dry overnight, and I will see you tomorrow for the final result. Bye! And here's the final result for doing our gradient from deep magenta up to our blazing orange. So you can see that right in the middle we have obtained our red, which is what we were expecting, especially considering when we did the experiment with the brilliant yellow, that we did gain some red as well. So here we can see that if we want something a little bit more on the deep end, we would be able to add some orange to our magenta, and it would create this very vibrant red and with a lot of warmth. And I'm someone who really likes warmth in my red, but sometimes I really tend to go to a more neutral. So if we wanted to, we could add a tiny bit of black in this one to have a more neutral red. So this is something that we could try to experiment with at some point, definitely. So hope you liked the video, and if you did, please let me know. Please consider sharing, liking, and subscribing, and I will see you in the next one very soon. Bye!